Ah, blessed silence. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to Volya Radio. I'm going to quickly do a timestamp and then tell you we've got a very exciting guest today, after I'll tell you about in a minute, and I think Alan will be here in a moment. It is Monday, June 8th, as Prince always says, in much of the world, but not all of the world. It is 9:01 a.m. in Portland, Oregon. It is 10:01 in Edmonton, Alberta, in the free and independent country of Canada. It is 12:01 or a minute after noon in New York City, where I'm going to unfortunately be too soon. Again, it is 5:01 p.m. in London, 6:01 in Warsaw, 7:01 in Lviv and Kyiv and all over the beautiful country of Ukraine. And it is 12:02 now a.m. On Tuesday, June 9th in the workers' paradise of Perth, Australia. Um, anyway, okay, so we're getting ourselves installed here. We have a very special guest today. His name is Bob Wood. He's someone I ran into by chance in the Uku Inn. Uku Inn is the little guest house of Ukrainian Catholic University's charming little place, wonderful place to stay. And Bob just happened to be in a room across the hall from where I'm staying. He will be back in a moment. He's getting some coffee. Good thing to do. But Bob has been here, and I'll ask him when he gets back to tell you who he is. But he has been in Ukraine for the last few years, teaching English and political science, and otherwise volunteering and traveling around and getting to know particularly Ukrainian students at Ukrainian Catholic University. And he's got a lot to tell us about that. But in the meantime, hello, Alan. Nice to see you.
Hey, Robin, it's great to see you. I think this is going to be a wonderful show, and I'm looking forward to it so much.
Oh, you're Bob? Yep, this one here. Oh. Yep. I'm sorry. uh, totally missed what you just said, Alan. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Robin. I was just saying how much I'm looking forward to this show, and and running into Bob Wood uh, at Ukrainian Catholic University. These are the kinds of connections that you can make in Lviv or anywhere in Ukraine, really. And they are the kinds of connections that we all are able to make here on Volya Radio. You know,
That's right. And I was talking with a closed mic. Yes, it's absolutely right. This is one of the wonderful things about coming to Ukraine is the incredible people you meet. Before we go any farther, though, Bob is here, so I just wanted to introduce you. This is Alan Brewer, my co-host. Meet Bob.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
Hey, Bob, I'm doing well. Nice to meet you, and hope to see you. Hope to see you soon in Lviv.
Cool. You're welcome here anytime.
Okay, so Alan, I'm going to ask Bob just a few questions, and I'm sure you have some questions too. And then I really want to get into talking with him about the wonderful students that he works with. I sent, and I'll try to put up in the nest in a minute. I sent you a couple of clips of interviews that Bob had done with in a series called "Ask a Ukrainian,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where questions were sent by people back home in Michigan, I think, right?
Yes.
To asking what they wanted to know from Ukrainian students. It's really a wonderful thing. And so, anyway, so I mean, the first thing I'd want to ask you, Bob, is what they always ask me and Alan: do you have Ukrainian background?
No, don't have any Ukrainian background.
Very interesting. So, how did you get here? What was it about Ukraine that pulled you in?
Well, I'm am I good? Can you hear me? Okay.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. Let's talk. When the full-scale invasion began in 2022, well, first off, I'm a history guy, and I have a political science background. That's my field of study, and so I'm aware of the world, and I travel a lot. And oddly enough, the initial coming to Ukraine in 2022, when the full scale invasion came, had more to do with Aleppo than it did with Ukraine. Because in before the revolution, or before the war in Syria, I had been in Syria for a month, 3 weeks, and I'd been up in Aleppo, and I had met people in Aleppo, and Aleppo was a beautiful city. It's an old city. It's up near the Turkish border. All the soup was marvelous, and it was just a great place. And I watched what Putin did methodically to Aleppo, just destroyed it. He did to it what he did to Mariupol. Yeah. And so I just said I'm going to get involved. And so I did. I live on the west side of Michigan along the lake. And there isn't a huge Ukrainian population there, but I hooked up with people on the east side where there is a huge Ukrainian population. And they did fundraisers. It was the Ukrainian, we were called the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee. Yeah. And I fundraised, I kind of spearheaded the west side. I was the west side, and they had a big contingent on the east side. And so I started to go back and forth and volunteer in Detroit, which is across the state from Spring Lake. And then we started to do fundraisers and silent auctions and food and music events. And so I get deeper and deeper into Ukraine and learned more about Ukraine and read more about Ukraine and met Ukrainian Americans and Polish Americans who I became good friends with, and that spring and summer we did well. We raised a lot of money. We raised, maybe even more importantly, we raised awareness, and we contacted representatives, and then at the end of the summer I just said I've got to go, and so I booked a ticket to Krakow. And I'm booking a ticket to Krakow tomorrow. Or no, Wednesday, I'm going back. I booked a ticket to Krakow and flew to Krakow, took a bus into Lviv and landed. Yeah, and landed here. Yeah. So that's how it started. Yeah, that's how it began. And then and Alan, you jump in whenever you got a question. Yeah.
Well, one thing I'm wondering, Bob, is how did you land at the Catholic University as a professor?
Well, I am a professor. I'm a teacher and a professor in the U.S. And I didn't know anybody here. When you travel a lot, you migrate towards universities. I do, because they're always in beautiful areas. It's just a center of thought and interesting people. And in this case, it certainly is. And so I popped up here, and by happenstance, I went down to the English department, and I got handed off a few times, and I landed with a gal named Marta Demsham. And Marta, I remember it was early October, and classes had just begun, and she had some English classes with philology students, and these kids. She said, "What can I do?" And I said, "Well, I want to be of use." And she says, "Well, okay, I will give you my class. I'll give you my classes for a week." And so, that's all you need. And so I got introduced to these kids, and they were first year students, 16, 17 average, and they were just so alive. They were so awake. They were so inspiring. They just had fire in their belly, and they were impressive. And I sat down with these kids, and I said, "Okay, what can we do?" And we came up with an idea that I would email back to Michigan and ask friends and students for questions. Give me questions to ask these kids. So these questions became Ask a Ukrainian. The kids then selected a question to answer into the iPhone video, and they answered their question, and they just knocked it out of the park. I mean, these were beautiful. These are really cool short interviews. They're just like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 minutes, and they're good. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
It's a clip in time.
Yeah, no, and I definitely second that. Alan and I have had the chance to see some of these. They're all up on YouTube. And if you want to get a picture of the future of Ukraine,
Yeah.
of the people who are going to rebuild this country, go take a look at them. I'll try to, I think I put some of them on my timeline. I think I put a couple in the Volya radio timeline also. If you get one of them, you can find the rest of it. It's called Ask a Ukrainian. And these kids are amazing. As Alan mentioned to me, there are those cynics here. They're very open and very but still very positive. I mean, amazingly positive considering what they've been through.
I just comes back to me with Sophia. This is our reality. This is our reality. That's it. This is our reality. These kids were just, man. They just yeah.
And Sophia, the one
The little gal.
it's very sweet. I mean, they're all wonderful, but she also mentioned something that I think you and I have talked about, and I think Alan, you would agree with this too. Is the kindness that you find here in Ukraine. It's an incredible thing. And it radiates out of these kids. You don't hear about hatred. You don't hear about negative emotions so much. I mean, you do hear about fear. You do hear about feeling uncertain of what the future is going to bring. But you hear an incredible belief in the goodness of Ukraine, in the fact that good will triumph in the end, and Ukraine will be victorious. And as I said, you just see if these kids are going to be in charge of Ukraine in a few years, I think Ukraine's going to be in a very good position.
Yeah, you do see that, don't you? You see that it's pretty cool. And yeah, it was very good. I used those videos then. I used them to come back at Christmas time. I came back and I did events all over West Michigan. Everywhere, at libraries, at community centers, at breweries, at wherever you could do them. And we had really good turnouts. And then so the Ask a Ukrainian became Conversations with Ukraine. Yeah.
And one of the things you'll notice too, and then I'm going to hand it back to you, Alan, for a question, is these kids speak incredibly good English.
Yeah, they do.
The philology program here is amazing. And the teachers of Ukrainian language are really, I've studied a lot of languages and I've spoken to other people who have too. These teachers are on a different level.
Yeah.
They're really something. And, the whole philology department here is really amazing. And like I said, these kids speak beautiful English. All the while, I mean, not in the tape so much, but you'll find Ukrainians, the better a Ukrainian speak English, the more they apologize for not speaking good English.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, back to you, Alan.
Thanks, Robin, and thanks again, Bob, for taking time and sharing part of your day with Robin and me and with all of our listeners here on Volya Radio. And I just want to emphasize one thing that you said. When Ukrainians, including these young Ukrainians, when Ukrainians speak of what they are going through, what they have gone through, decisions that they have had to make, they always do so from that point. It is our reality. This is what we are living through. I have heard so many Ukrainians, especially young Ukrainians, tell me their personal stories exactly from that point of view, very emotionally, but very straightforwardly. And I will have to say, in many cases, without animosity. I mean, they are sad and heartbroken at what has befallen them and their families and their nation, but they are very straightforward about it. Now, I'm about to be really unfair to your American students, Bob. Please compare an American college student with these young Ukrainian college students.
That's a good question. I'll tell you what the biggest thing I found is. Um, when you teach, you just you're just inspired by young people constantly. It doesn't matter where you are. They just bring something to the table that's alive and awake and inspiring. One, and so I find that in the U.S. and I find that in Ukraine. But the thing that I really, really love about these guys is that was 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and being on campus and going to the cafeteria, the trapeznaw, and walking and talking with these kids. The thing that I love the most is they are so grateful that I am here. Oh my God. And so warm. And Mr. Wood, sit down. Come on, what are you doing? Sit down. I don't feel like that would happen in the States. And I like I have lunch or I have dinner or I have a walk. I go into the park or I see these kids everywhere and so they're kind. They're really kind and they're grateful for my presence, but I like them. I like them. I just like them. Yeah.
And Bob, how has this experience in Ukraine at the Catholic University, how has it changed you?
Well, I become more awake. I become more aware of the world because I'm in the world. I'm in a spot that you need to be aware of. I think that it has made me. I've learned a lot from these young people about resilience, about dealing with life as it's put on your plate and being positive. Um, I feel like I'm a bit of an ambassador for Ukraine. I mean, because well, and yeah, I have a group of these kids. Some of these kids actually were in it. There's 6 girls that go here that we have created an ambassadors club where we do Zooming with different universities in the United States. And so I will be online with them here into the university while I'm here in the school. But then, like this summer, I'm going home and I'm going to work on the elections, and then they will Zoom in, and I'll be in person at the university when they come to the screen. And so I don't know. It's the first long-term time I've lived abroad. I've traveled gobs all over the place, but I've never been in one spot for so long, and that's kind of cool. It's a different one.
And I would say, Alan, too, this is an incredible way, method of outreach that, something we've talked about a lot is trying to get more Ukrainian voices in. That it's important to talk with Ukrainians, not just about them. And
Yeah.
these interviews that Bob has done are, really give you a picture much more than you and I explaining things for hours on end of really what the situation here and what is here and what people are going through, but also what.
Robin, I lost you there, your audio there.
Sorry, I'm a little far away from the mic. I'm sorry.
Oh, go
It's
ahead
just
again. Now I can hear you.
okay. Sorry. Yeah. No, I was just saying that this is a very important. This fills a very important gap, which is being able to actually speak to Ukrainians rather than about them. And it's the more we can do this, the more it gives people a much better picture of of what the situation is, and of who these people are, why Ukraine and Ukrainians are so important to support. It's an eminently worthy country and worthy people, and you see that more and more the more that you actually speak with Ukrainians. Over to you, Alan.
Thanks, Robin. So, Bob, what do you think these Ukrainian college students want to know most about the United States? And when they see the news, read the news of Donald Trump cutting off help to Ukraine, what has their reaction to that been?
Oh, there's no confidence in the United States anymore. It's as if it's almost as if the Trump administration is a is a greater hindrance to winning or to being successful in this war than Putin. It almost is. There's no expectations at all about the U.S. When I first came here, it was there was a lot of excitement about the United States and U.S. support. And I teach political science, and we just had a hell of a 2024 election night. And we went all through the night. We were crowded. We had screens up. We were doing the electoral thing, everything, and up through then still there was even a thought from too many Ukrainians that Donald Trump was going to be a positive impact on this war, and there's nothing now. No expectations. Zero, zero, zero.
Well, I mean, that's something that I think that you see pretty quickly as Ukrainians, from because of Ukrainian history, they're very clear-eyed about these things. They would like the support, but they're not. I mean, I tend to be rosier about this than most Ukrainians are. They can see, they will see what the situation is and try to figure out what to do from that point. But it's I mean, Alan, we all are on the same page with this. It's absolutely horrific that we have let Ukraine down like this. And one of the things that I find particularly touching is and I'll ask Bob, have you run into anyone who has been negative toward you as an American, as opposed to feeling of what they feel about what the administration is doing?
No, I haven't, but I don't. But when I first came here, people wanted to take U.S. government classes, and they don't want to. They don't want to learn about U.S. government. They don't want to learn about checks and balances or the Constitution or none of that. It's not popular, and it was extremely popular 3 years ago.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to know anything about it.
And yeah, I know. I was in the middle of reading the Federalist Papers a couple of years ago, and it's sort of when you see what's actually happening. I mean, Alan, I'm going to ask you to respond. As I mentioned to Bob, Alan had worked on the Hill for a while. You can, Alan. I'm going to just turn this back over to you. You and Bob both know more about this than I do.
Oh, I don't know about that, Robin. I used to love reading the Federalist Papers. As a matter of fact, I can only tell you that as a young person working in the United States Senate, and actually at that time for a Republican senator, and
I didn't know that. My
yeah,
goodness.
yep,
What senator?
Bill Cohen from Maine,
Okay.
who was elected to the Senate in 1978, and there is no job equal to a job on Capitol Hill when you're young. And I wouldn't encourage you to stay there for your entire life. But when you're young, you can learn so much. And I think this is true whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. You just have to keep your ears open, learn a lot of lessons that are taught you every single day, and carry a well-developed bullshit filter, and it'll be one of the most valuable times you spend working.
When I was, I've taught at different levels. I've taught at community college, university, and high school. And I used to run the close-up program. I don't know if you're familiar with close-up. In Washington, D.C., I took 12 to 15 kids annually for a week in Washington. And we were on Capitol Hill a lot, and we were roaming around D.C. a lot. And I got to like DC. I mean, the city itself has some cool neighborhoods, and it was a great place to take young people. And so, yeah, there was an energy up on Capitol Hill. But I remember, I'll remember, and this was probably about 12 years ago, and so things were beginning to get bad. Things have been bad for a while. But I remember Carl Levin. Carl Levin was one of the most powerful senators in American history, actually. He was so, and he was ours. He was Michigan's senator. And I remember in sometimes uh, elected representatives would treat kids with respect, and sometimes they wouldn't show up. They wouldn't show up for the scheduled meetings. They would send a staffer, which was fine with the staffer, but I always felt like the representative needed to be there. And Levin always was straight with us, always was tough with the students and said, "What do you want to know? What do you want to know?" And I remember the last time I saw him, and I can't remember the year it was. Wow, it was about 12 years ago. And he said, and he was retiring. And I said to him, I remember saying to him, I said, "Man, we're really gonna miss you." And he said to me, he said, "It's poison up here. It's poison." He says, "There's nothing gets done up here, and it's ugly and it's poison." And if that was poison 12 years ago, I can't imagine what the poison is. So,
Well,
yeah,
I remember Carl Levin quite well. As a matter of fact, he was a U.S. senator when I worked in the Senate, and I am familiar with that program because sometimes I would address these delegations of students,
yeah,
and I remember they always asked me the same damn question: "How can you possibly have this job? You're so young." And when my
yeah.
father visited me in Washington, he said, "Only young people run the country today. Where are the older
Yeah,
people?"
yeah,
But I
yeah,
would
yeah.
also I would love to have the same experience, as a matter of fact, at the Rada, Robin and Bob in Kiev.
Yeah, I wonder how it got. Do you have much experience with what
No,
goes on there? Yeah, I
no,
think it's a very different kind of
I think
setup.
it's a very different kind of setup.
Yeah,
I don't think it's nearly as open,
right.
or even I don't even think it would be if there wasn't a war. I don't think that we still have the illusion of democracy. I mean, we have this thing that, yes, you can talk to your senator and you can change his mind in a minute, and he will Mr. Smith goes to Washington on you, and things have got to change. That's why I'm going back and I'm working. I'm going back on Thursday, and hopefully I'll be working by this weekend on.
Oh, it's Thursday already. Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to be working on. Abdul El Sayed is running for Michigan Senate. No, U.S. Senate in Michigan, and it's one of the 33 Senate seats up. There's a lot of. It's going to be midterms are going to be really, really big. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to it. I want to roll my sleeves up and see if I can help.
I wonder, Bob, has your experience in Ukraine inspired you to do this fall?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think that well, I gotta get out of here because I gotta do something or I'll go crazy. I do. I need to do something other than scroll the computer.
You're right, doom scrolling,
Oh my
right? Yeah.
God. Yeah, well, just the fact that we have, you can't. One thing that I've learned is I didn't not realize when I came here just how much our democracy was admired in Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
in post-Soviet times. I mean, Ukrainians, when I first got here, our constitution, they believed in it more than I believed in it. Um, they looked at us as such a beacon,
Yeah.
and we have fallen so quickly. So, because nobody's looking at us as a beacon now, and they really did. They really did. I didn't realize it was that entrenched, that deep, that passionate, really passionate.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that. Alan, with older people, in these former Soviet bloc countries, that they think back to the days of listening to Voice of America
Mm-hmm.
and Radio Liberty, and how important it was, how that kept people sane in some ways, realizing that there was this different way of doing things outside of what was going on in the Soviet Union, and no, yeah, I mean, I think any American who cares about their country at all, their heart has got to be breaking in the situation we've gotten into, and so quickly.
Ba-
Back to you, Alan.
Basically, Trump has put America's reputation through the wood chipper.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we'll ever be able to put it back together again. I don't know, but it is absolutely true. Always the experience I've had wherever I've traveled, especially in Europe, and especially through countries that were occupied by the Nazis or were occupied by the Soviets, the impression of the United States, as you say, Robin, as this bright shining beacon, was always present, even to the point of older Europeans shaking my hand and thanking me because I was an American. And I said, "Well, I'm not that old. You really should be thanking my father and my mother." But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's true because it's not like this is a one-party mess. This is a two-party mess. This is an equal opportunity collapse of a government, and it's been collapsing for a while. We're getting further and further away from from the money. It's overwhelming. And they talk about corruption here a lot, and the kids are adamant about fighting corruption. They know that their country is corrupt. They address that corruption. They are in the street about the corruption. They don't shy away from the corruption. But our corruption, and in both parties, is just enormously well, it's legal. I mean, we've
Yeah, that's the
legalized
worst.
it. We've
The worst
legalized
part
it.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so yeah. I don't know. It's distressing. That's why these guys aren't distressing. These guys are still optimistic,
well,
and they have a reality.
they also have the recent history going back to Maidan, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
They do. Yep.
I'll just share again, as I've shared before on Volya, uh, a very funny bit of advice from a Ukrainian friend who said, when he read about the No Kings rallies in the United States, he said, "You Americans think you can schedule your revolutions for the weekends. You can't do it that way."
Yeah, I've had to explain what those were about. But they also, I flew back for the November and the March one, and I interviewed people in Chicago in those, and then I brought those interviews back into the classroom here, and they were really, really interested in the interviews and some Ukrainian, because I met a lot of Ukrainians at the events too, because I carried a Ukrainian flag, and so that there's that little spark of individual citizenry hope that they can identify with, but then you have to explain to them the indivisibles and what they are, and that these no kings marches are necessary to keep the spirit up in the indivisibles, and people are trying, they're trying to they're trying to fight. They're trying to stay above the waterline. I think, and it was good for me to go to those No King marches. I had to go to those, and I felt the first one in Chicago in November was electric. That thing was just, the ice had just landed in Chicago. It was ugly, and boy, there was energy in that city that weekend. So
I want to ask both of you, since you both are political people, what hope do we have for a change in support for Ukraine, especially after the midterms? Is there any? Are we going to see? Are we going to see a change? Do you think there's something we can hope for?
Go ahead now.
That's a really tough question, Robin. We just had the House of Representatives vote out uh, legislation to help Ukraine. It has to get through the Senate. I don't even know if it will come up for a vote before the August recess in the Senate. I don't know if it will pass, and if it does pass, I actually would expect Trump to veto it because that's who he is. After the midterms, will there be more support for Ukraine? Again, very, very difficult to answer. I think it depends on people like Don Bacon, who's in the House of Representatives, who's a Republican, taking aside new members of the House, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, and explaining to them why their support of Ukraine will make such a difference. Same would be true in the Senate, so that even though a lot of strong Ukrainian supporters won't be serving in the Senate next year, Michael Bennet from Colorado is running for governor. Tom Tillis has retired, really forced out of the Senate by Trump. Amy Klobuchar is running for governor of Minnesota. All very strong supporters of Ukraine. They'll all be gone.
On a positive note, I think Trump peaks on the election night, regardless of what happens. His power is going to diminish tremendously from that point, and I do think that there is still majority support. I mean, pretty good majority support in the House and the Senate to support Ukraine, and so I think that there may be a chance for some kind of support, but I think that the ball's been handed to the Europeans. And it's now what the US has to do is fulfill Patriot missile batteries. They need to do those things. That's what needs to happen. And that's all on Trump. And that's desperate. I mean, Russia is, I just got back from Odessa. I was in Odessa for 8 days. And Kiev is being pummeled, and Odessa is being pummeled, and Kharkiv is being pummeled, and Sumy is being pummeled, and there just isn't. There's no response from the Trump administration, and these midterm elections are gonna. He still holds. He has such sway with the Republican Party until this election is over. I'm afraid.
One thing I will say, I think that the support among ordinary Americans for Ukraine remains above 70%, and that is huge support for Ukraine. And I just have, Lexicon is with us. I have a couple of other questions, but let's go to Lexicon, our good friend who is also frequently in Ukraine. Lexicon, go ahead.
Yes, Lexicon, you may have walked past this morning. She's in the language program here right now.
Oh,
I'll try to introduce
I'm in
of
the
you.
gym. Where are you guys?
It's sitting in my room drinking coffee and chatting with you.
Can you? I don't know if I can see where you are from the gym, but anyway, that's where I am. Yep, I somehow talked my way in here. No, on the same topic you're talking about, and hope to meet you, Bob, before you go. But that's soon. Thursday.
that is soon.
Yeah, that is soon.
August
But
was the
if
word.
you're ever in Trapezia, that's where I am. Anyway, I just wondered, you're talking about what could change in support for Ukraine. The other thing that's bigger news probably is if Ukraine begins like doing more sensational stuff sensationally faster and all that stuff, I mean, that will begin to be back in the news because, you know, the news loves big bangs and so on and loves the overthrowing of big dictators and people like Anthony Beaver, salted old professors on. I see him on podcasts talking about the cruelty, what accounts for the cruelty of Russia throughout history. I mean, people talking all this kind of stuff, totally different from what they talked about before. So that I'm thinking, will that have some kind of impact and will on popular opinion? Alan is always saying, you know, America loves the winner, and an underdog winner. What do you think, any of you, that could change? Do you think it will? Thanks.
I was just about to say that lexicon. America loves a winner. But, and Ukraine is winning. This story is only now actually picking up a little momentum and getting reported widely in the United States or really in press all over the world. The more that story is published and talked about, that Ukraine is actually winning, means that we are defeating the Russian disinformation and propaganda of how Russian victory is inevitable. So it could have a big change lexicon if that story gets out, I think.
You know, that relates to another question I'd love to hear both you and Bob talk about is what has happened recently with some of the wackier MAGA types like MTG and who is that other one? Laura Lomer, who is that her name? Who are suddenly recognizing the Russian influence in the information space. Is that making a difference? Is people's image of Russia changing in such a way that it will make a difference?
Not that I see any evidence of, Robin. It's sad that more Americans don't see what is happening. They don't see the opportunity to confront and defeat a nation that is a sworn enemy of the United States, has been for decades and decades and decades. Putin
Mhm.
is more of a sworn enemy of the United States even than Stalin was, or even than Khrushchev was, who, as everyone remembers, said that the Soviet Union would defeat America without firing a shot. Uh,
Right.
Go ahead, Bob.
I think you're right in regards to the United States. I felt like this spring, if you would have asked me last fall, at the beginning of the fall, what I thought, I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, going back further too, it just looked bleak. And then with all of this drone technology and the successes on the battlefield, um, you see, as an American, I see a positive light. And then I talk to students and I talk to people and I say, what do you think? And you don't hear that from them. You don't hear victory. What I hear from them is this thing is going to go on and on and on and on. And I don't hear them saying victory's close at all. At all. And we forget the human toll. I was just up in Rivne yesterday, and every town has a different way that they honor their dead soldiers. whether it's this Mars field here, which is God takes your breath away,
Yeah.
or or the or the different ways that they do it with the giant photos and the
Right.
flags, but they're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. There's hundreds and there's thousands and there's villages and there's so many. I know that Russia is being beaten up a bit, but Ukraine is the human toll is gargantuan. I don't even know how to gauge it. And every new town I go into, I see these hundreds and these thousands of faces that are dead. And I don't think the average Ukrainian is looking at victory. I don't think they are. I
Yeah.
don't think they're as optimistic as I was thinking, because that's what I was looking for when I was asking them. I was thinking they were going to say to me, "Yeah, we're on the move. We're going to do this," and they don't. This is a lifelong slog with Russia.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, Alan, as we know from the books that we've read in book club too, this has been going on for hundreds of years already.
Oh,
And we would like to, I mean, as an American, I tend to think, think short term, let's get this
I
done,
know, I
everything's
know.
gonna be fine. And I think, unfortunately, I think that Ukrainians are probably more correct than I am about.
This is our reality. They're sober.
I wanted to ask you about you have been dealing with young people, and a lot of the young men that you deal with are of the age where they are having to make a decision. Are they staying in the country? Are they going to possibly serve? Do they leave everything before they get to the age of where they would be, where they would be eligible to be mobilized? How have you seen that with the people you work with?
They're under the age here.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're going to university, so they're not. They can still even travel abroad.
Yeah, that changed.
They changed that recently. Yeah, they changed that recently. You don't see it as much with the young men as you do with all of the students and their relatives, and they all have, people in the line of fire, and so
Yeah.
you it's interesting because I don't feel threatened in Lviv.
Mhm.
I don't feel
Yeah.
threatened. Do you feel threatened?
Not at all.
I don't.
I feel safer here than in Brooklyn.
No, I do too.
Seriously.
And I'll tell you what, in being in Odessa for 8 days and having just, there was one day we had 7 alarms.
Mhm.
And people just go about their business. They go about their business and they, for the most part, they'll glance at their phone.
Right,
They'll see if it's a ballistic
Right,
missile. And if
exactly.
it's not, they ignore it. And so it isn't the immediate threat. It's, where are my loved ones? Where is my mom? Where's my dad? Where's my dog? Where's my cat? Where's my uncle? That's the thing. That's what these alarms do to you.
Mhm.
And you and I, we don't feel that because we
Right.
don't have loved ones in those spots.
Yeah.
And so I would think this country is going to be so damaged when this war is over. It's going to be so damaged.
Well, they say even now that something like 80% of people are probably would be diagnosed with PTSD at this
I would
point.
doubt that at all.
And and that's something I wanted to ask you about, though, about that. One of the things that we've been reading about the interwar period, and we're reading Yaroslav Pritsk's book in book club, and they talk about the breakdown of the social structure, the breakdown of the legal structure, and the incredible violence that resulted because of that breakdown and because of so many men coming back from the war who had of necessity had to go over that line of killing another human being. You don't see that in Ukraine. You don't see,
No.
and yeah. I mean, I guess the question is, how do you see that going forward? And why has that not happened? It is in Russia. You hear about these things happening.
This is, I haven't run into one unsafe experience. If anybody that listens to your podcast wants to come to Lviv, come to Lviv.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's safe. It's safe. It's safe. It's
Yeah.
I mean,
Alan and I bag out about that all the time.
God, you walk through the middle of Strisky Park in the middle of the night. You're not. There's never a problem. Never.
Yeah, that's right.
I never had a problem. But I do think that the reality of war is going to bring people back. They're going to have to deal with with missing limbs. They're going to have to deal with PTSD. They're going to have to deal with who fought and who didn't fight, who made money and who didn't make money. They're going to have so many corruption. There's going to be so much that they have to deal with when this is done. And this university has a really good psychology department. And these young people, they know it. They know that they're going to have to deal with this, and they're ready, and they're willing, and they have their hands full. This is going to be a real hard place.
Yeah, but we see, the multi-generational damage. I mean, Ukraine is still suffering from the damage from the Holodomor. That hasn't gone away.
Oh my God, kids talk about you're right. It hasn't gone away. The Holodomor hasn't gone away. Russia is again. I was in Rivne this weekend, and so I met I met a person up there, and he was showing me around, and he showed me where this castle had been, just this giant castle, a castle that you would see in a bunch of other old Ukrainian towns. And he said that after the war, the Russians leveled the castle.
Yeah.
They went down to the foundation 10 deep and buried it, ended it, and put a stadium over the top of it. So they have tried to erase Ukrainian culture for centuries.
That's right.
And it's just it's endless. It's really, really endless. It makes me wonder how, just think if Russia wasn't here, you look at Latvia, you look at Lithuania, you look at Estonia and Poland, and you look at how the EU has been able to transform them economically, but Russia has this thing with Ukraine, and it wants to destroy its soul.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It really does.
Yeah.
And until you can kind of start to get it when you read about it. But when you come here and you talk to people, and they all have Russian stories about mothers and fathers and grandfathers and Holodomor and all of these things. It's this. Someone asked me once, how are Ukrainians so resilient? They must really love their country. And I said, yes, they do, but I think they're driven by as much of a hatred for Russia as they are as a love for Ukraine. There is just a visceral hate for Russia. There is. And my students have reminded me of that on a lot of occasions.
Yeah, it's not necessarily. You don't see it. It's not the first thing that comes up, but
but when you sit down,
and the number of people who have Russian relatives.
Oh God!
And the stories I've yet to hear a story of anyone saying, "Yeah, I'm still in touch with my Russian relatives, and they understand what's going on." It's always these stories of I don't speak with them anymore.
Don't speak with them anymore. Yeah.
They told me that we're all Nazis here, and that Putin's coming to save us.
Yeah.
Anyway, I see Lexicon's hand up again. I just wanted to mention we've got maybe 20 minutes or so more, and then I know Alan has to go, and I'm sure Bob does too. But I see people down in listeners who I would imagine you guys must have some questions. Come on up and talk with us, Alan and Bob and I and Lexicon. We can talk to each other all night, but it's much more interesting if we get a few other people up here. So if you've got a question, got an observation you'd like to share with us, please do come up. Over to you, Lexicon.
Yeah, well, thanks for that invitation. I do have an observation along these lines. I think I was here last year, as you know, for a while here and in Kiev. So I worked with some very young teachers and graduates in Kiev, some graduate students. And the stories they told me, yeah, there were a lot of eye openers. I don't know if it's exactly hatred, sort of loathing. Yeah, loathing. We used to talk about fear and loathing. Loathing of the way that the Russians, like all these old gray men, and it was the Soviet system too, because they had their own old gray men in gray suits. And like one young woman, I remember, told me so many stories. Well, she was my tutor, it was the age of my grandchildren. And she talked about her dad told her almost all she knows about the Soviet Union times is from her parents, who must be the age of my children. And she said, though, that her dad told her about her grandfather had a shop. And because we're here in Lviv and very close to Poland, they could hear Polish radio, and they could record, they could hear the news, knew what was happening. They knew about, for example, the 20 years that Solidarność worked in Poland and to hold the first free elections in the Soviet system. But they heard music and they taped music, and her dad sold bootleg, illegal, that is, tapes of this Western music. And you just see her eyes shining when she talks about it. At the same time, what do these young people love? And we know lots of people say what killed the Soviet Union was the Beatles, was like none of the other. And that's part of the whole spirit. And Bob, maybe you have some experiences like this, but I could just see her thinking and imagining the way well, she said that these people had to control everything about you. So every fun thing you wanted to do, everything you did. So they even controlled and stultified the possibility of young people having these things that, Ukrainian music now, and we know our own youth and the stuff that animates us to this day, decades later. I just wondered if you know what I mean, and if you have any sort of observations on that, Bob.
Well, I mean TikTok. I mean they're pretty. I would assume that in those times before the internet, that was gigantic, and I'm sure it was. I guess my thought is just. I mean, I still don't. Just leave us alone. Just leave us alone. Just let. I mean, come on. I just want to see. I want to see the EU migrate to the east and just let. You, I have traveling around and seeing. It's a beautiful country. It's got so much potential. I mean, Odessa, it's got the sea. It has Crimea. It had Luhansk and Donetsk and all the mineral wealth. It's got the Carpathian Mountains. It's got the wheat fields in the countryside and the beauty of nature in these old cities. And there's so much potential here. And here you got Russia just hanging there and stifling that potential in
And I think you're right. What Ukrainians want more than anything else is just to be left alone.
let us just join the EU. Let us work out our problems.
Right.
Because they will.
Yeah.
They
Absolutely.
will. They went into the streets last summer and protested corruption, and they know it's a problem, and they'll figure it out. But they can't because of they're losing hundreds, scores and scores and scores of people.
Yeah. Alan, back to you.
I was just going to say, Robin and Bob and Lexicon, I think in Ukraine, but also elsewhere in Europe, history continues to be a living memory. And I don't know why Europe, especially Eastern Europe and especially Ukraine, have been so much more successful than the United States, for example, in passing history from generation to generation as if it is a living memory. I think this is true in Poland. I think it is true in Ukraine, especially when you consider the Holodomor. This is an event from the 1930s, but Ukrainians think of the Holodomor today as if it was an event from their own lives.
Yeah, Bob, that's an interesting question. I mean, my impression is that Ukrainians are much more educated about history.
About their own history.
Yeah.
Sure, they are. That's I would agree with that totally. Yeah, I would. They at least the ones that I know. I mean, and I know Americans. We aren't. We don't know about our history.
No.
So, one thing I'm wondering about the Catholic University in Lviv is, does this draw students from all over Ukraine, or are most of the students from Western Ukraine?
Both. Both. Most of the students are from Western Ukraine, but there are students from all over Ukraine. Yeah.
And the other thing I'm wondering, Bob, you may have some insight into this. Ukrainian students from the east, say from Kharkiv, or from the south, say from Odessa, uh, do they have much different experiences or a much different kind of growing up than young people in Western Ukraine? I know that in Kharkiv, for example, you're much more likely to meet people with Russian relatives. Kharkiv and Belgorod were actually thought of as sister cities.
Russian speakers, even.
A lot of Russian speakers, and many of those Russian speakers no longer speak Russian, Robin, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. You know, one thing that's interesting. It's I've had this on a number of occasions now. Students will tell me, especially if they're from a Russian speaking province or background, oblast.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not from the West, then there's a good chance that they did grow up in a Russian dominant language school.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a moment where they dropped the Russian and they went full Ukrainian. At a certain bombing or a certain civilian bombing. I'm thinking of this one guy, Slatislav, who there was a bombing in Dnipro of a maybe it's the opera house. I can't remember. There were several people, civilians killed, and he says, I told my parents I'm not speaking any more Russian. And they followed him.
Wow.
They followed him. But this isn't just one. They all have a moment where they had the competing of the Russian and the Ukrainian, if they're from even Kyiv, just going towards Kyiv and going to the east, and where they made their separation. And so they have different stories. A lot of the kids that are from the east have moved around a bit. They've moved to different places, coming to the west, but not far enough west, and then moved again to the west. And some of them they moved to the Czech or to Germany immediately after the full-scale invasion, and then migrated back. And this is interesting, I think. I've had students who, this one gal, I remember when I was sitting and talking with her, and she was just 17, and she had moved to the Czech with her mom, and her mom was cleaning houses, and she was living with her mom, and she told her mom, she said, I want to go back. I want to go back to university in Ukraine. It's my country. I want to go back. And her mom didn't want her to. She was afraid for her. And and she came back, and her mom acquiesced. And I thought, one, I can't see an American kid going back, but I certainly can't see an American mother who didn't want her daughter back in harm's way, saying, it's your choice, honey, and I'm going to support you in this. That was so cool to me. I really thought that was something. That was good. It's good to remember those things. I need to remember those things.
Well, I mean, and that shows a certain respect, even,
It's total respect for the mother to have that confidence in her daughter, and for the daughter to be on a play on a level field with her.
Yeah,
it does. You're right.
Great story.
You know, I wonder if and I thought Lexicon used a very good word, loathing.
Yes, I
If the
agree.
loathing of Russians, or the hatred of Russians as a result of what they have done in this genocidal invasion, in places like Kharkiv or even Odessa, I think it is a result of the Russian invasion. I think that in Western Ukraine, there has always perhaps been greater suspicion of what the Russians really want in Ukraine. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think, there's a difference. Yep. There is a difference. There is a difference. And those differences are going to have to be dealt with after the war too.
Yeah.
There's so much that's going to be on the plate of this place.
Yeah, this is going to be I mean, the nation building, which was just, the nation building only started pretty recently for Ukraine, really. I mean, there was always the concept of a nation has been around for a long time, but the actual ability to build a nation began at the turn of the 20th century, abortively.
And that was a struggle. Hard
and then, and since 1991, but it's a lot. And this is one of the things that I always get it gets me very upset when people complain about Ukrainian corruption or whatever. This country is not even 35 years old.
Yeah.
And what they have accomplished in under 35 years is astonishing. And but it's everything is new, and there's still a lot of work to be done. And they're trying to do this in the midst of fighting off a genocidal invader.
The other thing, Robin, and this is something that a Ukrainian said to me last fall when I was there. Erasing corruption in Ukraine is a generational project. And he was speaking especially about the stamp that Soviet society and Soviet organization had left on Ukraine. And you can see it actually everywhere, even in the architecture. But it left a much deeper stamp on how business and government are operated.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost in some ways almost two countries. The people who grew up and had to function under the Soviet system, where it wasn't optional. If you weren't paying bribes, you were hospitalized. If you didn't pay a bribe, you wouldn't get sheets. Forget about medicine, and it's that. And but the younger people have a very different approach to it.
They hate it.
Yeah, it's like Steve Jobs said at one point about older people and technology. He says, "Well, the death is going to take care of that after a while."
Yeah.
It's sort of a hard way to say it, but it is true. At this point, there's still that old Soviet overlay that is going to have to, yeah.
And the EU will help that as well, because you're going to have to jump through hoops.
Yeah.
That hopefully that can't come soon enough.
Yeah. And I give President Zelensky and the people around him a lot of credit too for insisting that they don't want EU light. They don't want special treatment. They want to be in the EU as an equal and gone through all of the hopefully the procedure will go quickly, but that they want to go through, meet all the benchmarks and be a full member of the EU, not.
It's going to be. I just read an article today where they are just releasing the $90 billion that was centered for Ukraine.
That Orban was blocking.
Yeah. That is hopeful.
Yeah.
There's hopeful things. There's hopeful things going on.
Yeah.
I think really when you're around young people, hope it's always at a higher level.
Yeah.
And you hear and you see so many bright young kids here that and this is happening at other places around Ukraine. That's all good. That's all good. That's all a positive.
And we see in the government too. Unlike the United States, for example, they don't have 89-year-old people in charge of things. It is young people. It's that independence generation and younger who are for the most part in charge of things now, and it makes a big difference in a lot of Eastern Europe. I mean, with the exception of of Karl Nawrocki, who I can't stand, but you see in most of in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, in a lot of the Eastern countries, Eastern European countries, a younger generation that's really stepping up at this point, and that's going to make a difference.
It's interesting that with the Hungarian election
Yes.
recently.
Yes.
Yeah, that's been really
Yeah.
interesting watching that. I don't know what happened in Armenia. Wasn't there a vote in Armenia?
The anti-Soviet or whatever that he
Did he
won.
win?
He won.
Did he win substantially?
53%, I think.
Okay.
Alan, do you know the specifics on that?
I,
The
I
Armenian election?
I know that the anti-Soviet candidate did win, but
Good.
I haven't really read about that election in depth, Robin.
And the Russians are screaming about how it was unfair, which was unfair is what they brought in hundreds and hundreds of Armenians from Russia to skew the vote and everything, and they blanketed the place with propaganda, and the anti-Russian candidate still won.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So yeah, we hope to see many more of this.
Well, you were saying earlier, you guys were talking about what America likes a winter,
Mhm.
So does Russia. And they're in whatever's happening with Ukraine, Russia's not a winner right now.
Yes.
And so that's you can still look and say Ukraine's got a long ways to go here, but Russia's not a winning hand. And that is so important to these states that are around it as well.
Mhm.
Russia is not a winning hand right now. They aren't. And they got no place to go. They're not a winning hand.
Well, they've North Koreaized themselves. They have no
really
no allies anymore, really, and they're pariahs, which is a great thing. I personally, I wonder what you would think. I'm personally banking on the Russian Federation falling apart at a certain point into constituent. Smaller countries, many of which will end up aligned with the West and with Ukraine.
I don't know. I'm just pleased right now that at least you don't feel that Russia is ascending.
Yes.
You just don't feel that. You feel that Putin's boxed himself in, and this is because you look at this war and you look at it's awful for Ukraine, but it's just stupid for Russia.
Yeah.
It's just really stupid.
Well, and you can see, you see more with the fact that that attack on the Chernobyl exclusion zone yesterday.
Mhm.
I mean, you're seeing they're doing more and more
Desperate
really
things.
stupid.
I know that, and that's unsettling
Mhm.
to me.
Oh yeah, in Zaporizhia. I mean, they're but also we see well the latest Zelensky that was a master stroke of that public letter that he did you see what he said? Somebody they said that he was rude, and his answer was, you should have seen the first draft of it.
Yeah. That right now Trump is the biggest hindrance to peace. I
think that's probably right. Yeah. Okay, Lexicon, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to come in on Pashinyan. Give the man credit, eh? I know what our perspective is. The anti-Russian candidate lost. The guy who won is the incumbent president named Pashinyan, and he's the pro-EU candidate, pro-Europe candidate. So I just thought I'd put it that. And what I did see is that although he got a clear majority, he did not get a super majority in the sense like the way Magyar did in Hungary. He doesn't have the numbers that will allow him to make some of the constitutional reforms that he'd like to make. And one area where it's important is that the Azerbaijan situation, the agreements that he agreed, the accords that he agreed to, need to be passed in Parliament and with this substantial majority, and he may have to make some compromises there. But anyway, that's what I heard. Back to you.
Yeah,
You know,
thank you.
Yeah.
that is a good reminder, Lexicon, to remember that these candidates have a pro side to them,
Yes.
pro Europe.
Yeah.
They're not just anti-Putin or anti-Russian candidates. You know, it's interesting, even as we've spoken here, and I have a couple of thoughts, Robin, before
Mhm.
we have to sign off from
Yeah.
Volya Radio here today. But the we've talked about Ukraine, we've talked about Armenia, many Eastern European countries. Uh, Georgia seems to be falling out of so many conversations, and
Yeah, it's
and
true.
they are still struggling, and they have hopes to become a member of the European Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they really have been hanging on for a long time already.
Yeah, they're at a tough spot.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, and this is weakening Russia is going to be good for everyone. So that's where all of the world should be doubling down at this point. I think you made an important observation, Alan, which is something I think that we have to make a point of remembering, which is to not define everything in terms of Russia.
Yeah. Yeah,
Susan did too. That Russia is as I'm saying, we're pro EU, not anti Russia. Russia has defined Ukraine for centuries, and it's at this point, it's time to not let them do that anymore.
Yeah. Good point.
Absolutely true. It was really Lexicon who made that point. I was just emphasizing her point, Robin. You know, uh, just as a final thought from me,
Hmm.
you know, Bob, I uh, do a frequent program with Chuck Farr, who's a military analyst, and almost always in the comments after our show, I see it's almost always an American saying Ukrainian 18-year-olds need to be drafted, trained, and become the spine of the military. And that is so, it will go so against the grain of the Ukrainian spirit. Having met Ukrainians on the front line, Ukrainians, parents of kids, they all say, no, we are fighting to save our children so they can have a future. They see their children as a living bridge to the future. They would never send their kids to war.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. That's a good comment. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's some kind of a military training. Do you know what it is, Bob? Right across the street here. Oh, okay, right.
There, yeah.
Yeah, because you see, it's interesting. You see young people, but you see quite a number of people who, in the States, I would be surprised to see them in uniform at that age. But there are still, a lot of older men who are serving, and as you say, I think that a lot of especially the beginning of the war, and it continues to be there, that they are protecting their future, the future of the country by continuing to serve at an age where it would be unusual in most Western countries.
There's too many people dying. There's
Yeah,
too many
no,
people dying.
yeah,
Of course, I mean, the other thing that we have all seen, the young people of Ukraine volunteering their time in
yeah,
war industries. I mean, I don't know how many, well, I do, but the secret drone factories that
yes, yeah.
I've
We've
been
had
to,
the opportunity to see a few of them. Yeah,
young people, 24
Mhm.
hours a day.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and they're pretty much on a volunteer basis. Yeah, I mean that's something too, Bob. I mean, and then I think we'll have to close down soon after this. But one of the things that has still strikes me is the volunteerism in Ukraine.
Yeah.
That there's I've told you, Alan. I think there's this card that you can get when you're paying for food in the cafeteria and other places called Locale. What it does is every time you buy something, they kick some money into the Serhiy Pertula Foundation to buy drones. And you see every concert I've gone to, there's been money raising in the middle of it. And these are not rich people who are kicking in money above their taxes and everything else. There's still that spirit of volunteerism is still really alive and well in Ukraine.
Yeah, it is. It is.
All right. Okay. I think, Alan, at this point we probably are about ready to shut down. Anybody has any last minute questions, say that. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to you, Alan, for some closing thoughts. Any other questions you want to ask Bob?
Well, Robin, an hour of live from Lviv with you once a week makes me want to go back to Ukraine so much. And hopefully I will be on my way in just a few days. Bob, I'm disappointed. I'm going to miss you.
Yeah,
But
it's you. I didn't
when are
know
you
you
go-
were coming.
when are you going to be back in Ukraine?
At the end of the summer.
Okay. So next time around, right, Alan?
I've got my own battles to fight in Michigan right now.
Well, after we successfully install the right people in the American Congress, we'll come back here. Yeah, I think one of the things, I mean, you obviously have got what they some people call facetiously Kiev syndrome. Once you come to Ukraine, you always have to come back. So I'm sure Alan and I will be back here again next year, God willing, if we stay healthy, and we'll have a chance to meet up again, I hope.
Cool.
So with that, Alan, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bob, so much. This has really been a wonderful.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a great opportunity.
And hopefully, this will be the first step of other conversations.
And anybody has any questions or I recommend you, if you're interested, those little videos of those kids
Yes.
are really something.
Yeah, and as I said, I posted them on my timeline, and a couple of them I put in the Volya Radio timeline. Definitely worth looking at. They're charming. I was in tears watching some of them.
Yeah.
It's really, they're so very touching. And okay, with that, Alan, I think we're going to say Slava Ukraini.
Harom Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Smer Dvorahem.
Thank you, everyone. Coming up next, and I let my calendar go to sleep. Hang on just a second. Live radio. Sorry, folks. What do we have coming up next here? We have, okay. Just, all right. We have, okay, coming up. Accidental Ukrainian is coming up in a couple of hours. I assume probably with Adam. And then after that, we have Firefella and Vatnik Soup for Booms and Woe. A special guest appearance by Vatnik Soup. And then later on today, we have Ukraine updates and Russia's hybrid warfare with James. So that's it for the next day or so. Check our Volya Radio site to see what's coming up when. And as always, all of these broadcasts are up on Spotify if you've missed it, if you want to hear something again. And remember our fundraisers. And with that said, I will say thank you, everyone, and skoro побачимось.
Join us on the radio. We look forward to seeing you again. Your audience. Your audience.